drug dealer ever arrested, shot, or killed is replaced. Just like that, and just like that. And every staffer knows it, every congressman knows it, but what has to happen is you have to make the phone ring to make them change their vote. I'm also advocating an arrest-free arrest-free 911 call for any alcohol or drug overdose. Let's say yes to life. In the context of prohibition, let's start thinking of saving lives of those. You've heard it in your campuses. Kids are dying of an alcohol or drug overdose because the person supplying the tequila or the cocaine does not want to call 911. Let's say yes to life. I'm calling for a national commission that Walter Cronkite asked for a couple of years ago to study this entire issue. And I'm also asking for people to, if less than that, is bring in the best addiction doctors in the country to study this issue as to what would happen if you actually legalize and regulate. And on the flip side of that, when I urge you, see your state senator, see your state rep. They have office hours just like your college professors. And when they're out of session, they'll see you for 10 minutes. You can come in there and make your pitch. But you know, when they come in there and they cross their arms like this, and you can just tell you're not going anywhere, just say, you know, be careful out there, Mr. Politician. Tell your boss, because right now the rumors are that drug dealers are now funding the politicians of the world. So be sure your boss doesn't all of a sudden accept money from a drug dealer, because of course they're all in favor of this particular policy. Sometimes it pays to be edgy.
Thanks, Howard.
But I want to quickly get through it in a few minutes here, the history of drug prohibition. Most people think it began with Nixon, and of course it actually began with a lunatic named Hamilton Wright in 1914. He actually began in 1909. He was a doctor who was made famous for his discovery that beriberi is an infectious disease. It is not, of course. It happens to be a vitamin deficiency, but by the time his mistake was discovered, he had already married well. He married the head of the Republican Party, Senator Washburn's daughter, and he, looking for employment, his new father-in-law installed him on the Chinese Opium Commission of 1909, and all of this disaster flowed from there. He made up his mind, just out of thin air, that not only did the Chinese have a terrible drug problem, but that the United States had a heroin problem that was even worse. None of this was true. There were only 200,000 addicts in the United States, according to the best numbers we've been able to unearth. And these people were tax-paying, productive citizens with a medical problem, not unlike diabetics, who went to their doctor, got a prescription for morphine or heroin or whatever their particular Jones was, and then they shot up or took the pills. In those days, morphine, of course, was powerful enough that you could take pills. You didn't have to shoot it in order to get the bang. You could simply get pharmaceutical morphine, and it was not required that you shoot it up in order to feel it. So you had a drug problem, you went to your doctor, he wrote your prescription, you went down to the corner druggist, you gave him the prescription, he gave you the drugs, you did the drugs, and then you went to work. Some surveys showed that 80% of the people in one drug registry in Florida were tax-paying productive citizens before the Harrison Narcotics Act. On that day, when the act was unconstitutionally passed, and it was not it did not outlaw drugs, by the way. It only required a tax. It was intended to gather information. In other words, the Congress did not believe that there was a heroin problem in the United States either. So they passed this law, the Harrison Narcotics Act, to collect information. A penny a pound was the tax. And that way they could find out how much was coming in and how much was using, and they would keep track. But the clever guys down at the Treasury Department, along with the enterprising guy, Dr. Wright, who had assisted in engineering the law, had an extra clause in there. A physician will be able to prescribe morphine in the course of his professional practice only. And it was interpreted not by doctors, but by the Treasury Department that maintenance addiction was not normal practice. That was feeding junkies. So all of a sudden, we took 200,000 medical patients who were tax-paying productive citizens and declared that they were dope fiends. Not surprisingly, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I got one quote here I'll read to you that came from a medical journal that I'd unearthed at the time, which was incredibly. 6 weeks after the Harrison Act went into effect, the New York Medical Journal carried an ominous observation. The immediate effects of the Harrison anti-narcotics law were seen in the flocking of drug habitués to hospitals and sanatoriums. Sporadic crimes of violence were reported due usually to desperate efforts by addicts to obtain drugs. The really serious results of this legislation, however, will appear only gradually and will not always be recognized. These will be the failure of promising careers, the disrupting of happy families, the commission of crimes which will never be traced to their real cause, and the influx into hospitals for the mentally disordered of many who would otherwise have lived socially competent lives. Okay, predicted it right down to the button.